All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I know some are still logging in as we speak, but thank you for joining us and welcome to our AI conversation series. I'm pleased to introduce Mark Gust, Consulting Director at Solutia Consulting. Mark brings more than 30 years of experience leading complex enterprise initiatives with deep expertise in technology, strategy, and program leadership. He has led major software rollouts and system upgrades for organizations including Target and Ryan companies, and has recently advised on AI governance and operating models at Ecolab. Mark is known for helping organizations move from pilots to sustained practical results. He'll start us off with a clear perspective on how AI shows up inside the enterprise and what it takes to turn experimentation into real impact. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared by email afterward. You can submit questions today in the chat box, or you can use the raise hand feature and we'll call on you and you can unmute yourself and speak live. With that, Mark, over to you.
Well, David, thank you for the intro. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Here in the Twin Cities, we have a nice 40 degree. For us, that's a nice warm melting. And as we think about the title of this, From Pilots to Outcome, how AI plays out in the enterprise, this is a good conversation series where we can learn from each other. AI is moving fast, and it seems that, governance, clarity around value, and the discipline during operations, uh, how do you get everything to move together nicely? Conversation is a great way so we can all learn from each other. And the idea is to scale with intention, not chaos. So I wanted to just call out that it's a conversation series. It's actually the second one we've had. Got some folks that were on the last one, and welcome back. And to the new one, new folks joining, we're so glad to have you as well. So, I kind of hit on this idea of peer discussion. We can learn from each other, trade our anecdotes of what's working and or what's stalling, or as you move from these reporting kind of things in silos to actual processes where AI is embedded in operations, there's a lot to discuss. So, just to kind of frame up the discussion, we want to explore your enterprise AI journeys and focus not on tools so much, but on outcomes. Wanted to do a quick little audience survey, kind of get you thinking about get us thinking about where you all are at. If you want to put in the chat, where's your organization today with AI? If you want to just type in the chat, 1, 2, or 3. 1, are you at experimentation? Maybe you've just got some ideas that you're playing around with. Or 2, do you actually have either agents or LLMs or some sort of AI in production? But maybe you're early, maybe there's just, a handful or two of AI projects in production. Or 3, are you scaling your impact? You're starting to have multiple different AI in production items. So go ahead and type your answer in the window. And maybe so I'm not flickering my screen. David, could you kind of give me results, kind of what you're seeing?
Yeah, you bet. We're getting a lot of twos coming in. We've got early production for several people. We have someone mentioning that they're experimenting with AI. They said we did a push on a couple of AI initiatives to production. Another one says just staying current and surveying from an EA perspective. Another mentions 3, so scaled impact, but we are an AI startup company. That was from Greg. And then another one, Miles mentions they're also a 3 with multiple products in production, and then a couple of experimentations dropped in. But it looks like early production is the most common spot with this group.
Very cool. Well, thanks for giving me that summary. Yeah, I've had conversations with some of the names you mentioned, Miles. I'm excited to hear about kind of what you've got going, as well as Greg. And I've got some questions kind of sprinkled throughout the presentation today, different opportunities for people to kind of engage in telling their stories. And I can certainly talk about, I've been working with Ecolab, and we're kind of getting set to move from that two stage to three, really scaling up across a very large organization. When you're in 120 companies or 120 countries and 40 divisions, you can imagine how scaled impact looks. So as you kind of think about, well, what does that mean then if you're kind of moving from pilots? Like what is a pilot for AI? Some obvious statements might be you're trying to figure out if your idea will really produce value, but you're not yet, trying to put your company's production data quality on the line. A pilot is a good um, term for where you're experimenting. I like to say value experimentation. And when you're in production, obviously you're thinking about, I mean, there's got to be quality data, there's got to be the ability to, manage risks. And why do we do all this, right? So, I mean, categories of benefits might be, your productivity to accelerate, or better decision information, or better customer support augmentation. That seems to be kind of a hot use case, using AI to, do agent assist and call summarization. But AI is good at the mathematical things like risk scoring, and, human review and recommendations is still needed. So that concept of human in the loop is needed for getting to value, where you really have human accountability and improved insights. And, just time savings, reduction in workflow friction. These are all things that can happen. But to get there, what's that journey look like? So to kind of get us thinking about, well, how do you move from, experiments to real value, and what sorts of things do we dig into? I wanted to really ground this in reality from the group. I'd love to hear from you all, who, as we move from kind of the broad patterns to what it looks like inside a real organization. I want to ask the question of the group: who would like to speak up from your company's perspective? Which AI use cases have delivered real value, and which have struggled to move beyond pilot?
Mark, this is Badri Pidatala here. How are you doing, by the way?
Good. Welcome, Badri. Good to hear from you again. I know you've been
Thank you.
doing AI at Graco, right?
Yes, yes. So I'm from Greco, and I and Mark have a long association, multiple years. So I can speak to a little bit about Greco's experimentation and where we are at. Let's ground this in reality. I think this is a great topic, by the way. But if you go to the previous slide, this is where companies are all struggling. Where when you say where AI is delivering real enterprise value, right? So this is where the problem comes in. Like, what do you value? The value.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can, as a developer, if you're a developer, you would say, oh, these co-pilots are making my life so easy, right? I can do things like what otherwise can be done in like 6 months. My project can be done in like maybe 3-4 weeks, or maybe even less, maybe even a week, right? So now enterprises, the CEO comes in and says that I don't know whether that is translating into my revenues, or it's saving my cost, because I'm still keeping the same number of people. And this is where the outcomes and the value realization out of AI, a lot of CEOs and everybody thought that they can generate quick value and great value. And that is the reason why we are seeing a lot of chaos in the market, like, oh, 10,000 layoffs because we are doing AI, right? And guess what? I went to this Gartner webinar here in Twin Cities, I think 2 months ago or so, and they clearly reported their insights, with all the surveys and all their experience. They said that that is not a true value. I mean, people are in terms of revenue or the expense, and companies are feeling the pinch, like what they thought AI will do for them is not doing the same things. So now the question that you are posing here, the next slide, that what is the value? What do we do? What are the use cases have delivered the real value, which have struggled to move beyond pilot? Again, to when you started this presentation, you said outcomes. I think that
Hmm.
is the key, right? So, people have in that MIT report, like 90% of the products failed with AI, and nobody read through the details. And detail says that all those 92% of the projects failed because the clear outcomes were not defined, or the business outcomes were not defined. So that is the key. Like if you have a business sponsor who can work with you tightly, and if you're realizing the outcomes out of AI, I think those are the projects that are going to production and realizing the value. And that is where I can give you some of Greco's experiences on how we are engaged with business, and they are a partner for us in AI, and we are generating the value, the real outcomes, and the value that CEO can think that it's a value. Otherwise, if it is not generating dollar amounts, then it is not value for a CEO.
You bring up such great points, Badri, that when you're starting, when you're in that intake discovery process, you have to ask the question and capture the statement. What's the intended outcome, and how do you measure success? That's how I'm thinking of it in what I'm doing. Is that kind of how you guys do it?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like at Graco, I can talk to you about my experience here is that business is coming with a problem statement, and we are trying to solve that problem statement with AI. For example, am I audible? I mean, can you hear me? I'm seeing some buffering on my page, so I'm just wondering if
Yeah, I hear you.
okay,
I hear you
perfect.
good. Mhm.
Okay, so basically, business came to us with a problem of sentiment analysis, right? So we use Cisco networks telephony. That is one use case that I can talk about. And we wanted to capture the voice of the customer. We wanted to see how our agents are performing and how we can improve, basically, and also know what is good from our product line, what improvements that we should be making in the product lines, and what customer is really asking us to do from enhancing our product lines. So, when I started this project, I don't know, it was just a 12 week project, 12 to 14 week project, but the outcomes were scintillating, excellent. And the reason why I say that is it is beyond a human thought process to see how AI is able to interpret the sentiment, insight analysis, and even recommend where we need to improve. I mean, it is opening up so many doors into quality assurance and to enhance what we can do even better in the long run. So a lot of great outcomes, and that is what is, if you show one success to the business, and that is the seed for much more, many initiatives and much more success. So that is where we are at right now.
Well, thank you, Badri. What a great use case you shared of real value and kind of what that journey looked like to get there and measuring success. I appreciate your sharing. As we kind of think about, oh, did somebody start to say something? Okay. Um, as we kind of think about, getting to that kind of value, there are common barriers beyond AI pilots. So as you kind of think about any company where you've got multiple departments, isn't it always easier when it's within your direct department and your direct control. But as soon as you have partners in other groups, there can be process collision across groups. There can be, data readiness issues. Do people trust the data and the governance of getting things from AI into operational processes? And there can be huge changes in skills and change management. We hear about coders that use AI to develop code, but then need, human review in the loop. Or we hear about people that come from the leadership aspect that need to know what's a realistic time frame to go end to end. And the organizational change management aspect of getting people ready to adopt and understanding why resistors might resist, both for internal or externally facing AI. There's a lot of common barriers. And I'm curious to kind of pull the group here in the chat window. If you could put your number of the corresponding answer, what's your biggest blocker to scaling AI in your environment? Is it 1, data, 2, trust, 3, governance, 4, skills, 5, the organizational change management, 6, security, or 7, other? And you can put a combination if you want to put a few numbers, but I'd love to kind of get a sense from the group of where you're at. Give you a minute to put your answers in the chat.
Hey, Mark, just so you know, for some people, chat may not be available. Like I'm seeing on my side, it's not enabled.
Oh, Kashi, great to hear from you. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, go ahead and unmute yourself. And in your case, Kashi, did you have one that you might like to speak to?
So I wanted to piggyback what Badri said on the pilot and this question that you have is, in my view, first of all, thank you for having me on the call. With
Thanks
respect
for
to
joining.
the pilot, I think the AI pilot proved possibilities, but operational integrations prove the value. Right? What I am seeing in the enterprise, across the enterprise, is the AI enthusiasm is very high, but the operational maturity is uneven. Most organizations are no longer asking like, should we use AI? They're actually asking more of, how do we make this repeatable and trustworthy? And the gap isn't the model capabilities. Models are changing, if you know, by weeks now. Like this exponential difference between 2025 and 2026 January and now models, what model can do. The gap is more of orchestration, aligning data, workflow, governance, and change management around the real business outcomes, right? The companies
Right.
the companies who are seeing sustained impact are embedding AI into the operational system, not treating it as an analytical experiment. That's the main difference. And also the big shift happening now is moving from AI as insights to the AI as execution. That's where the real transformation, in my view, is beginning, right? And back to
Yeah.
the blocker that you're mentioning here, I don't think personally the biggest blocker is data or technology. It's organizational readiness. Data quality does matter, but even with the good data, scaling AI requires governance, clarity, workflow redesign, leadership alignment, and trust is also very critical. If employees do not trust the output or fear the replacement, your adoption slows dramatically.
Those are all such excellent points, Kashi. Thanks for raising those points. I couldn't agree more. Within the current client I'm serving, we're seeing exactly that. That as you stand up your ways of measuring, security, make sure there's no data poisoning injected into the models, or as you're just keeping up with the rapid change. Maybe I, had a big governance program in all the documentation last year, but now with new layers of orchestration, getting everything updated and CI/CD pipelines managed, and how do you get the latest and greatest out to people so the adopters know what to adopt? There's so many layers to what you just said, but putting it all together, that organizational data readiness and kind of synchronizing, getting in lockstep or more in lockstep with each other. Maybe lockstep is too idealistic of a term, but moving towards that comes to mind. Any other thoughts from the group? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Mark, just to summarize some of the responses here, looks like 3 and 6, governance and security, are the two most common that we've seen here in the chat box. And Miles, he says different groups in our organization would probably answer differently, but he also had 1, 3, and 6 on there. Also mentions it's interesting how cost isn't on the list. That would be probably fall into that other category, but that's definitely a consideration as well.
Oh man, that is a good one. And it's a big focus of mine right now. So it is absolutely belonging on that list. Miles, I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak a little more to some of what you said if you're comfortable with it. That's interesting how you kind of phrased the ideas of the ideas together of 1, 3, and 6 and adding in cost. Anything else you wanted to elaborate on and what you put in the chat there?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah, yeah, we can
Oh,
hear you.
great.
Yeah.
This is
Well,
really
great to have you,
scary because
Miles.
I have a challenge in getting the thing started, but I'm here now. Yeah, so let me start off just by saying, Mark, thanks a lot for having this. This is a really awesome opportunity to hear from a lot of folks that I don't quite know. I've been in the Twin Cities for a long time, but haven't really synced up with a lot of local folks, at least in AI. So um, more to the point, feel free to cut me off because I tend to ramble. Yeah, Trimble, the organization I'm with, is global. So we have folks all over the world. I think we're 15,000 people right now. We consist of a bunch of different verticals. So we have construction related stuff. If you've ever seen the GPS poles that are used for surveying, that's a huge part of our business. But we also do work in transportation and logistics, and a bunch of other things related to forestry and all kinds of other things. So we're a very diverse organization. Um, Parts of that organization are further along in the journey for AI than others. We have some very advanced work going on with agents in some divisions, and other divisions are just starting to actually get going. Um, One of the things that I wanted to kind of highlight here that I've in my work has really been tied to responsible AI. It really goes back to that cost thing and more generally the idea of stewardship. So one of the things actually that I've noticed recently is that if you're running agentic systems, you have a choice of which large language model to use to power that agent system. And your choice there can have a huge impact on what happens inside of those agents. Um, Certain models, particularly the Gemini models, tend to be very thorough. And what that turns out to in an agentic system is you will get tons and tons and tons of tool calls if you're using Gemini to orchestrate your agentic system. And then there are other models that are much less so. So we've all probably heard about the cost of training the AI models. The cost of running them at inference too is pretty large. And when you multiply that by agentic systems, which make calls upon calls upon calls upon calls, we're really going to start to see, I think, a huge increase in the amount of traffic that we're generating, the amount of tokens that we're using, and the impact not only on our environment, heat, electrical consumption, all of those things, but also on the actual economics of doing this. So I don't know. I just throw that in there, but that's sort of my perspectives on some of the blockers. I think some of them we don't quite see yet, and they're just around the corner.
You raised such excellent points, Miles. Thank you so much for sharing on that. I'm seeing some patterns within that cost of compute and financial operations space. So as we think about concepts, we could do a whole session on observability and logging, monitoring, and alerting, right? What happens when something either goes wrong or is a risk that could go wrong? And how do you put in the right dashboards to look at, and who should have the responsibility to look at that, and what threshold, if it's set, should cause somebody to take what action? So as we kind of map all that out in both what I call the operational model for the AI delivery lifecycle, as well as the governance. Governance has got so many pieces. You mentioned responsible AI. So like at the very top level to, AI, don't kill the humans, right? Do no harm, do good, produce value. Like that there are some things that you have to tell AI are your boundaries before you even get to a project or a program. And then there's governance within like a program, and but maybe everybody, all AI projects that go to production need to have the same. Okay, FinOps, you need a cost dashboard. So why is there a spike yesterday? What happened? Oh, somebody, some vendor didn't follow our coding standards and they did really bad data ingestion, and they had, terabytes of data and they didn't ask for it. Well, that shouldn't happen, right? A governance framework should stop that. But if it does happen, an observability framework should catch that. And that's just cost. That's just one blocker alone, right? We could have a whole session on that. Um, David, was there anything else in the chat window that we should call attention to, or should I move onward?
I think we can move on. I think the key takeaway here is both governance and security seem to be top blockers from this slide that people are responding to.
Yeah, and we can feel free to hit back on some of those topics and some of the questions I've got coming up. So the group can feel free to kind of think about those topics. They might have a story, a challenge, or a success, or a question on. So what must be delivered to deliver enterprise value? So here I'm kind of tying back to the theme that, ideas don't automatically produce outcomes. Something happens when you go from pilot to production to, deliver value. And in that table, I kind of thought about some high themes and what the frictions are and what the common traits are. So as you think about standalone dashboards, somebody might have an interesting demo, but no real operational integration. And so the insight's not really trustworthy, or unclear economic ownership. So we talked just about that now, that, is there ROI accountability? How do you allocate cost? In some cases, models are hard to trace to projects or divisions or groups, resource groups within the organization. And so when you move from an innovation project to a production project, either way, you could be having spikes in cost. And are you going to treat it like a cost center overhead, or are you going to allocate it out? And if you do allocate it out, is that model a little difficult to explain? We've got tags in place, and we govern people to tag their, compute usage contributors, but maybe some things like model serving don't have it, and you have to go by service principal or by, the user who accessed it to attribute it out. And then you got to be explain, here's your bill. Oh, you got sticker shock. Here's the justification why you're being allocated this. And that's just unclear economic ownership. Data readiness gaps, so fragmented data. So let's say you got three environments: one for production, one for development, and one for staging. Just pick three common random environments. You gotta have guardrails around. Do you have synthetic data only in innovation piloting, and production is the only place where you can have real data? To make sure you don't give your customers trade secrets out to the world. There's a lot about why data could be fragmented, or why you should use synthetic or other, real data. And then there's the cultural resistance dimension of, people are afraid AI might replace their job, or maybe they actually have learned how to use AI to be more productive, and now they feel like they're going insane because they're moving faster than they're used to moving at all times. And if you couple that with a low trust in output, sometimes people can dig their heels in. So I'm kind of given ideas of a lot of big themes of, what must be orchestrated to deliver value in the people dimension. So I'm going to ask the audience a question, and feel free to have me flip back to that last slide if you like. But how do you balance speed to value with risk, compliance, and reliability? Anybody wants to speak up, go ahead and unmute your mic, and I'd love to hear your insight.
Yeah, I'll chime in here on this one. So where I'm coming from within our organization is I've sort of taken on the responsible AI torch, I guess. Um, and one of the things that I'm seeing is that we do a little bit to try to accelerate the adoption of AI within our organization, but that really isn't isn't really the thing that I feel like is a constraint. It's the how do you balance that with risk and compliance and reliability? One of the tools that we use internally that I found very helpful, although it's pretty targeted, is red team testing. So I work in our corporate division. We have a bunch of different branches, and if, a bunch of different business segments or divisions, and if one division wants to release a product, I'll organize a red team test with the most nefarious individuals I can find in the other divisions to try to hack what they've done. And I think there's a lot of value there. I've looked at the automated tools for this, and they can be helpful, but there's no substitute for somebody that's a born hacker. So it's just a great technique that I found that works really well in our org, and I thought I'd share that with the others.
Oh, thank you, Miles. Yeah, red team testing. That is great to hear your experiences. And Kashi, I see you've got your hand raised. Why don't you go ahead and
Yeah,
weigh in, and then Leo next.
definitely. I would say if you're talking about speed versus risk and balance, speed matters, especially in today's competitive landscape. But speed without governance lead to the technical debt and compliance risk. So I believe that, and what I would call that control acceleration, right? Like fast pilots within guardrails and with strong data governance frameworks and incremental scaling. If you do that approach, that will be successful. And organizations that succeed and treat governance as like an enabler, not a blocker, they have the more success rate compared to others. So, and I also like the red teaming and the hacker mindset to break it to fail fast approach. So that would be my input.
Great points, Kashi. Yeah, I love how you brought in the need to have standards for what is it you're trying to comply with, and then kind of that practical balancing of like if we were to take all of the standards that we'd say, yep, these are all requirements, and then have an agentic agent run it, we might have so many projects to, address that we might not be able to address them all with the resources we have. So then the ability to kind of be practical and prioritize speed with risk and have governance have enough guardrails that you know how to keep things on track. Great points you raised. Thank you. Leo, great to have you back. I appreciated your contributions on our last conversation series as well. Why don't you go ahead and respond with your thoughts?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. And I always enjoy learning from you and from your company. So thank you. Thank you so much. I would say that in addition to what has been mentioned so far, the risk of a solution looking for a problem, it's always there. And the risk of us in technology potentially influencing without enough business clarity the business leaders. or us business leaders wanting AI because it's the latest fad, but we really don't have clarity on the problem to solve. So I would say because organizational change management and lack of understanding from senior leaders from a technology perspective, and sometimes lack of understanding from technology leaders on the business elements, that in my mind, those two things are the ones that become the highest barriers to speed to value. So one, from a solution perspective, how to balance, one is to make sure that there is complete clarity on the business problem, the business opportunity, and that the corresponding root cause analysis has been done to make sure that AI is the right fit for that business problem, and that senior leaders and technology leaders are clear on that. And then the second piece is that there is a business leader, not just a technology leader, that becomes the sponsor, the executive champion. And he or she needs to be well versed. He doesn't have to be a technology expert, but well versed on why AI is the right solution for that opportunity and how it works. Because it goes back to the trust element that you guys mentioned. Part of the challenge with adoption is that when business leaders or business people at all levels don't have an understanding, hence on their stability, on their um, yes, the traceability, and the visualization of how the model gets the answer is one of the main reasons that drives that skepticism, because they have been used to understand the flow of information and the decision points. So that level of education to get that sponsorship and that trust is vital, in my opinion, in my professional opinion.
Leo, you raised such great points. Thank you for raising those. As I think about the leadership education component, they need to, they know what they want. So then they, say, go forth and, either try this or do this. And then some level of loop back. Okay, here, your ask takes this in order to trust it and actually get to value. Having that dialogue, it feels like being bilingual, right? Where you have to speak, executive speak, peer speak, some very deep pockets of, data scientists can go into some very deep levels, and then bringing that all into a constant alignment. So cadence and discussions, and looping leaders in at the right moments for decisions too. It all comes into play in your answer. Well, thank you. Greg, I see your hand. Greg, would you like to give your thoughts?
Well, I have a somewhat self-serving question. In just complete transparency, I work for a startup that helps deliver AI infrastructure for people that want to introduce AI in their software delivery lifecycle. And we're seeing relatively good uptake in very specific areas where in highly regulated industries that require a lot of security and governance, because what our solution does is it takes development environments off of people's laptops and puts it into like a cloud governed environment where they can kind of securely introduce an agent like Claude Code, Codex, Cursor, others. But in general, as we look to kind of move into wider industry, I'm just curious as to how people are using these tools in their organizations today and what level of security and governance they have versus, like the question here, speed. We see people that are really effectively taking advantage of these tools, but the actual results that people see are kind of like what you had described earlier, very varied by people's expertise and very varied on people's tolerance for risk. And so my fear is at some point as we look to broaden our market share, what we're providing maybe seem more of a tax versus as a productivity improvement what it's meant to be. And so I'm just curious as to people's perception of these tools today in their organization. anybody has some feedback, I'd be very interested in hearing it.
So at Ecolab, where I work as a consultant, we deal with everything you just said. So if you can imagine an environment where you've got different types of AI plugged together in some cases or standalone in others, but a governance framework that wraps around everything, we start by categorizing types of AI. So some people will call it horizontal versus vertical AI. And some people will go a third level, but let me just start with that. So if you've got, so some vendors like ServiceNow and Salesforce are very sophisticated in their ability to integrate with Copilot, for example. So if we want to have anybody in our company that looks up via AI, hey, what agents do we have available? Well, depending if we've created our own orchestrator layers to intake agentic solutions to go discover all the agents, or an automated agent registry to determine of these types, which determine to be which merit being registered. So for example, if I'm just a person who makes a personal AI using Copilot, and it doesn't ever need to be used by anybody else, right? That doesn't need to be approved to go to production. If I'm a team lead and I create an agent that makes our team more productive and we start to rely on it, that should be in an agent registry, for example. And so I'm trying to illustrate how types of AI deal with types of governance and types of speed. So if I just want to make an AI for myself, maybe it's, if I have access to an LLM creator or I use an existing model and build an agent, and I want to do it in 7 minutes. And somebody in the company built a AI maker that could do that, but only for innovation, never to go to production, right? That's an extreme example of speed, right? But if somebody wants to go through the process of putting something in production and governance needs to consider legal, PMO priorities of all the different value options against the cost, that's just, then there's legal. Just think about these things take time. Even if everybody were to be agentically optimized, it still would take time, right? So speed, so all of that kind of comes into your answer. But I'll open it up if anybody else wanted to respond to Greg's question.
I have one quick comment. Hey, Greg, it's really great to see you again. We worked together at UHD a million years ago. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
one of
most
the
definitely.
things,
It's good to see you, Miles.
yeah, right on. One of the things that I would say that I found in our organization is that there is a tremendous motivation on the part of developers to get into AI. And if there's any way that you can make the right thing the easiest thing, that's the way to go. Because any resistance that you put up there will result in sort of this like shadow IT, shadow AI thing going on, which is a huge
Yes.
risk for any
Yes.
large organization. So yeah, I would just chime in with that comment.
No, that mirrors exactly what we sort of see in the real world. So thank you.
Excellent point. Thank you for chiming in, Miles.
Yeah.
So we already talked a bit about measurement and metrics. It really does all come back down to that at the start, you need to know what your objective is and how you'll measure success. And it's kind of interesting how if we're talking just an innovation experiment, maybe maybe the clock doesn't start ticking against a service level agreement with a KPI because it's just a value experiment. And the rules of that should be, very flexible with guardrails. But if we're going to production, obviously we need to, know like, should we keep this agent running? Should we kill it? So there's not just the upfront, but there's the periodic review. So after you go through the life cycle and develop your AI and release it, now you've got all these things creating a huge compute bill. Are they still creating value? Is anything poorly written and needing change? Is Anything needing to go away, or do we have the right portfolio of AI forms? So I'd like to hear from the group. How do you measure success today, and did business leaders believe those metrics? Anything we haven't already covered there?
Mark, this is Badri again. Some of these like metrics, how do we measure? These are the things. It is the same for any project or any portfolio. It is AI is just another layer to IT and what we do for the business outcomes perspective, right? But I don't think the portfolio management, the governance, in the project management philosophies, all of these metrics would be any different for AI project compared to any other project. I mean, that's my take on it.
Yeah.
Definitely, AI is a new subject. Perhaps there will be some other new measures from the productivity enhancement, speed to market, go to market. I mean, all of these have been there. I mean, we have been doing software development for I don't know how many 50 years, and we always say that how fast can we go to market, right? I think those philosophies are here to stay, and it will be the same measure for AI as well, is my perspective.
That's a great point, and I see some agreement from others, some thumbs up. Kashi, I see you raised your hand.
Yeah, so a very good question from the how we measure the success. So we also need to understand first that many organizations still they're trying to measure AI success through the technical metrics, right? Accuracy, model performance, usage rate, and all those. But what they're forgetting is that business leaders care about operational KPIs, revenue lift, cost reduction, cycle time improvement, risk reduction, right? That's what the business leaders care about.
Yeah.
So the real shift happened when the AI metrics are all directly tied to the business KPIs. That means that's when I believe an executive sponsorship stands together. And what you were just highlighting, Mark, is it's changing so fast, right? The model, if you look at its Opus 4.6 compared to just December model, right? The 128K context window versus million context window. The thing that you are programming or you're developing something with the AI with the December 2025 mindset and prompting those things is no longer valid. So you guys, whoever is working on it, should be agile enough to pivot around it, right? Adjust and incrementally reviewing it where we are in the process. What's happening in the industry? How do we add new features in there? You cannot work with the traditional software development or AI project waterfall agile methodology from that perspective because things are changing every single month. So by the time you have the vision and the milestone and project management task to complete project by 8 months, it's already outdated. You have
Yeah,
not
it moves fast.
so that's what I would say. Real key to be agile and adopt human in the loop, have those gates and adjust accordingly.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Oh, I see a couple more
Yeah.
hands here. Great. Yeah,
Yeah.
Greg, you were next.
Yeah, I was going to say you're kind of I used to work prior to my current role. I worked at AWS as a solutions architect for 3 years, and I was lucky to have some people that were part of their Amazon Bedrock beta program. And Kashi just kind of hit some of my PTSD from that past role. You need to, my advice to folks is to combine things that, like what Badri focused on earlier. He highlighted some very clear business level success metrics, and then some things that Miles shared earlier on the types of models, the outcomes, how much they cost, and how they perform. And then you can kind of create a framework that shows the outcomes that Kashi is describing, like, hey, am I receiving the business outcomes? And now I've got a framework to kind of understand the options and costs for delivering that to my customer. so that, as a business leader, I can decide, yes, this makes sense. You think about a business leader, right? They have a finite level of like capital and cash that they can put at a particular problem, and they want decisions on where they need to place those funds to be most effective. As IT people, right? We love to quote unquote twiddle the bits. And so we love to play around with all the technical underlying things, et cetera. And so when you see a lot of the metrics, they all tend to be technical versus outcome focused. So I think that's really key for us to really understand as technology leaders to be much, much more business focused.
Yeah, and that bridge between business and technology leaders. Great point. And Miles, I see you have your hand up. I'd like you to go next.
Just to pile on to what Greg is saying. The other thing, there's been some discussion in our organization about Goodhart's law, which if you're not familiar with that, that's the statement, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. And technologists are really bad at that. Whenever we start to put up dashboards around responsible AI and start to think about targets for responsible AI, this is one of the concerns that I have. So don't let the measurements and metrics run away from you. Be focused on the business side, because that's at the end, that's really what's going to really count. Security is very, very important, but I think it's really focusing on the business stuff.
Boy, that's a good point. Yeah, it would be really easy, especially with AI, to run an agent to go out and get a million targets that you must hit, whether you can hit it or not, whether you can resource that big or not. But being able to stay practically focused on business value and be able to continually scope your efforts and what you measure and do just comes to mind. I think you made your point better than I am, so thank you. Um, One question I like to ask, this might kick up a little more discussion here. It looks like we're 8 minutes to the hour. So closing perspective. So, we've kind of been talking about how AI leadership isn't just about pilots, or it isn't about more pilots. It's about scalable decisions and, operations somehow having outcomes that the business trusts, and AI is embedded in that journey. And I like how the group hit on the theme that it's not really different just because it's AI. I mean, outcomes and metrics are outcomes and metrics, no matter if it's human or machine, right? That helps you get there. Anyway, with all that kind of in mind, what we've discussed so far, and as you think about what you've learned in your AI journey, let me ask the group this question. If you could restart your AI journey with hindsight, what would you do differently?
I can go. I would say, with hindsight, Mark, is what I would start with less with tools and more with business outcomes. Many earlier AI journeys were technology led. If we were restarting, I would begin with clear business KPI targets, a data governance, data readiness assessment, change management strategy from day one, a defined scaling playbook that how we need to go. The AI transformation is less about model sophistication and more about the organizational orchestration. And my parting thought will be that AI does not fail because of models. It fails because organizations underestimate change management. That's what I would say.
Great answer, and I would foot stomp it. I agree with it. Any other comments from the group? As I think about my own experience with, standing up, well, when I came into Ecolab, they already had a responsible AI program at that high level, so that was great. And I came in and brought in kind of the AI delivery life cycle and the governance model at a high level. And I think all those pieces absolutely need to play. Then we started getting deeper into some of the cost and security and quality as we think about scaling up and, humans in the loop where they're getting spread thin. Where can orchestration help? Where can, some agentic and LLM help? And how can different rules for the different types of AI come into play? I think all those things I do, the same. Um, there's something to be said for maintenance of documents and getting the visibility of top-level leadership on the need to continuously invest in, human in the loop kind of documentation. It's very easy to just have AI go out and create tons of documentation and post it, but is it fully trustworthy, right? Having the right review process, procedure, policy in place. These are all things that I would confirm are the right part of the journey. I don't know that I've got a good answer to my own question there. I'm still kind of thinking about just, you know, what might we learn from hindsight? So anyway, that's why I'm interested in hearing from the group if you all had stories.
One more thing, Mark, I would add for the audience is that consistency will pay off in the long run than the hype. Individual as well in any company. I know there's a lot of buzz around SaaS is dead. We are going to get replaced. AI is going to take over the white collar job. I did a keynote at the University of Dallas last time, and I was telling them the analogy is when the trader used to do trading in the old age, right? He had the horse cart, and the job was going from point A to point B, move the goods, right? Then automobile came, the job remained the same. The way it just changed the method. Now instead of horse cart, you have a truck to do this, right? So people have to learn the new skills. So if you do not invest in yourself, every single one, including executive to the bottom frontline IC, right? You have to pay consistent time, read what is happening in the industry, keep yourself educated, and organization needs to provide that space for the people to reinvent themselves, to do the self-enablement, to play with it, provide the safe environment internally or externally, right? So they can play with that tool and see how it's changing, how it's experimenting with it. If you do not do this, watching just the videos or reading an article is not going to do this. It's just with the agentic world, especially with the open cloud that happened, it's just changed the entire game. The thing like the last year, the OpenAI and the agent were working only for like 14 minutes, and now it can do the work for a whole week autonomously. So those will be, I would say, it falls responsibility for everyone in the organization to invest time and money and learning capacity. Curiosity and consistency is the currency.
What a great closing thought. It's exciting times for people who have intellectual curiosity and for people who love to do what we did today, and that's to just keep a conversation going where we can share lessons, learn ourselves, as you pointed out, learn from our peers as we're doing together, move forward together. So we want to keep the conversation going. We want to have another one in probably around late April, so stay tuned. I've already got somebody that said they're interested in presenting on a pretty exciting topic. If you all would like to present or weigh in heavy on future ones, we'd love to see you again. And with that, David, I think I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Mark, thanks again for leading the discussion here around AI governance. I want to thank everyone that joined us today. Really appreciate the participation. It was really fun to just hear the live discussion. So afterward, I will be sending out an email with a link to the recording from today's discussion and a nice recap. And we'll also be looking at topics for our next conversation, probably in late April, early May. Once again, Mark, thank you, and everyone, thank you for joining us today. We hope you have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend, all. Thank you all as well. We'll see you.